Good morning, everyone. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Psych.Club and from the Tom Numbers Show. And I've got my friend Bo POLNY. Bo, how are you, buddy? It's good to see you again.
Really good. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me back. And should be an interesting conversation we got going on today.
It should. Everyone loved our first one together. Everyone loved it. So there was a lot of good info and different ideas when we came together with the racehorse analogy. So I think people are looking forward to part two. They've been calling out for it. So those new viewers, when I talk about numbers, A is the first letter of the alphabet, so it equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, all the way through to Z or Z, letter 26. And just to kick off the show, I know you've got a lot of good info for us today, Bo, but I had the opportunity to go to Mount Rushmore just a few days ago, and I found, you're gonna like this. So these are the numbers that I got at Mount Rushmore. So if you do, well, Mount Rushmore comes to 200, okay, which comes to like a thief in the night, which is a biblical term. Also, recently we had the funeral of Queen Elizabeth. That was at Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey's 200 as well. So I know those figures. But when I was at Mount Rushmore, I knew some of these, but I did a few more. So George Washington comes to 187. President Trump talks about $1.87, so I think he's making reference to George Washington. Theodore Roosevelt comes to 221, which comes to 1,000 years of peace. Thomas Jefferson, I'm doing this in the wrong order, I should have said George Washington. Thomas Jefferson comes to 174, which comes to currency exchange when President Trump came down the escalators. Also comes to eye of the storm, trust the plan. So there's some other references there. Abraham Lincoln comes to 123. Comes to Eric Trump, both you and me met him just a couple of weeks ago. Comes to silver gold, 123. So if you do George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, it comes to 705. And if you add 200 for Mount Rushmore, that takes you to 905. Now, I, like you, love the 888 number, 888. So what I did is I subtracted 888 from 905, and we were left with a special number, which is 17, which is cute. And I saw that and I was like, oh, wow, okay. So it was a blending of these things. So I thought I'd mention that because I was at Mount Rushmore. It was a beautiful place. And 888 plus 17Q comes to 905, which is Mount Rushmore plus Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. So I thought I'd kick off the show with that because it's a nice commonality that we've got there. So.
Right. And I don't understand the numerology side of it because, it's like from a biblical standpoint, numerology is you're not supposed to really look at it, or it's not really within the Bible. But the thing is that biblically, all the numbers make sense. That's the thing, right? So that's why when people say, and I love, the number one debate that people will have about, is the Bible real? The number one argument that Satan has brought up, evil has brought up, is there's so many versions of the Bible, right?
Yes.
That is a number one complaint that everybody, or argument to discredit the Bible, that everybody will always use. Yeah. And so the funny part of that is, and the fascinating part of that is, of all the different versions of the Bible, the numbers never change.
Exactly.
So that's what makes the Bible, incredible, because you can interpret it 1,000 different ways, but the bottom line is Christ died on the cross and he was resurrected on the third day and he fulfilled Scripture, period. It doesn't matter how many thousands of versions you want to read of that. It's all the same story. And mathematically, the fascinating part is, Tom, is the numbers in all of the versions, the interpretations will not change. So that's what makes it real. And so it's interesting to speak with you because, you take a side I've never looked at. I personally have never looked at, but all I know is that when we look at it together, we come up with many similarities in that, like we talked last time, we had a different discussion, but at the very end, we were very much similarly saying a very similar thing, in that, we still haven't ultimately seen massive change in the world just yet. And that's, really what we're waiting for. And all the numbers you just brought up, what was the goal of what you just did, right? The goal was to show that there's an end game to this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that what you're trying to show?
We all want to get to that end game, and also just bringing the commonality of it. So the 888 that you were using, and I love the 888 because you've expanded my knowledge on that, and then the Q with the 17, etc. And just it was, I saw it there at Mount Rushmore. But yeah, like you said, so we got past this. We want to see this change that we were hoping for. So what you were talking about, you've had new revelations, new things on that. What do you see kind of where we're at now? Because it was maybe I don't know, 10 days ago or so when we got to September 25th.
Right. So, you and I, so we met basically because you had a shirt on, double A. So I go, hey, Matt, triple A, that's even better, right? Because it's the Trinity, right? Father, Son, Holy Spirit, right? So that's the power number of it doesn't get any bigger than that, right? And so I showed you mathematically, and I was illustrating mathematically how that lined up to September 25 because it was 888 days from oil going to zero, which was a marker in time. And so what we were waiting for and looking for is September 25 was the birth of a new era, or the birth of a new, or the start of a new, is a new beginning. Right. And so, and when I looked at some of the prophetic words that I got, for the 25th, and we should review those again. Let me pull that up here so I can reference it correctly. But basically September 24, 25 was related to Haggai 2. And we've talked in Haggai 2 specifically, and the prophetic word for Haggai was multiple things were supposed to happen on that date or shortly thereafter.
Yes.
Okay, so September 25 was we'll be able to go back in time and put a line in that and say, okay, from that day forward, everything began to change. See, and it's an interpretation, when you read some of the prophetic words, like, oh, on that day, everything will change versus everything will begin to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I personally got, that's why it's kind of last week, I was just kind of laying low. I got an incredible amount of revelations last week, and we'll talk about some of them today. But the downloads I got were incredible because ultimately the main thing, the point that I wanted to get across was what happened on the 24th, 25th, which is a weekend, of last weekend. So it was, so it wasn't this past weekend, the weekend prior. So that was a start of those, a beginning. And so we'll be able to go back and look at that and see that really was the start and the beginning of things. And so what I got, and this is like the most relevant information, is like the closing of the door to Noah's Ark. Okay. So I want to give the analogy of that because I've used this before and it was incredible what happened. So historically, when in 2020, God said, the message I got was when oil went to zero, that was the day the ark door closed.
Okay.
So now I'm going to I'll give you the exact timeline.
So back in 2020 on April 20th, when it went to zero, when oil went to zero, well, went to negative 38. You talk about Noah. So this is interesting because the word Noah equals 38, which equals gold. And you're saying how it went to negative 38, which is Noah.
And interesting. So, and the stock market crashed also 38%.
Oh, there you go. Well, there you go. Yeah.
How does all this happen? You see what I'm saying? Because it's not random. It's by design.
Yeah.
It's truly wild to see these numbers come to pass. And so 38 is actually it's happened several times before, particularly oil going to negative. How does it go to negative $38 a barrel? How does it do that? But it did.
Yeah,
it did. Right. And so in that time window, so I'll go through these right here because this is really interesting because we're going to see this very similar thing play out right now. So rather than all events going down on that date, that's the date the door closed, just like oil going to zero. So that was a marker in time. Okay. So now, if you want to go through these are the dates. So April 20th of 2020, oil goes to zero. 30 days later, the Edenville Dam closed, broke open. So it was marking the birth of the latter rain, which will be greater than the former, which is written in Haggai 2 verse 9. And so that was so before there's birth, you have the water breaking. Okay. So, and we're heading back to Eden. So 30 days later, that was May 21. The Edenville Dam broke in the township of Hope, Michigan. Like, you gotta laugh because that can only happen if it's by design. The name choice is there. And then 40, remember, it rained for, when a door closed, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights.
Okay. Yeah.
And so 40 days and 40 nights ends up taking us to precisely May 31.
Okay.
30/31, depending on the time zone. And guess what happened on that day? On that exact day, the George Floyd riots broke out.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And so that was the opening of the second, that was opening of the second seal. Okay. That is a red horse in Revelation. That is a piece taken from the earth.
Okay.
Okay. And that was the birth. And because the latter rain was birthed, basically the second seal opened because riots broke out because of the Holy Spirit, coming down upon the earth. And so you've had both happening on that day. So the George Floyd riots break out 40 days precisely from oil going to zero.
It's interesting as well. You say that George Floyd. So George Floyd comes to 119, which comes to redemption, comes to foundation. So as we're going through the seals, these, there's chaos, but there's also the divine plan as well. And also you talked about with the negative 38. So negative is 83, which is an inverse of 38. We add them together, comes to 121, which comes to the word revelation, comes to the two words golden jubilee, and it also comes to second coming. Okay. For 121. So there's some nice correlations there with the numbers as well. So okay, so May 31st, and then where did we go from there?
So now let's just stop there and let's backtrack and let's talk about present day, because you can even take it at 100. This was the freak one, the crazy one that I basically said. So 150 days when the water kept rising and it hit maximum height at 150 days. And so the calculation on that came out to September 18th of 2020. Incredibly, that was all I said was something big supposed to happen on that date, right? And this one, still people talk about this one because on that day, nothing happened. 5 o'clock hits and Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's incredible how these time windows, we talked about it last time, Tom, it's time windows, right? How do I calculate the movements of the stock markets? More than enough, forget even that. How do I calculate the movements of Bitcoin, gold, and silver? Time windows. Time windows. They move for a certain amount of time, then they run out of time, then they reverse. Then they run for another period of time, and they run out of time, then they reverse. So they're time windows.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how I calculate. I go historically and I calculate time. So that we're doing the exact same thing right now. So now let's apply these time windows that we just mentioned to present day. Okay, so we know September 24th, 25th was the new beginning. It was Elul 29, it was Rosh Hashanah, a new era, and that was referenced in Haggai 2. The 24th day of the 9th month. Okay, so that's the new beginning. So assuming that that's when the door closed, because that's revelation I received, the door closed on this, so the events didn't go down on that date. That's the starting point of that date.
So the door closed. So the door closed on negative 38 on April 20th, 2020, but also another closing of the door.
Right, because there's cycles. There's cycles. So this is not Noah. This is not Noah. This is the cycle of Noah.
Yeah, got it. Okay? Got it.
This is the time window that Noah, that's in Genesis. So this is the time window that's written in Genesis. We are overlaying the time window on present day.
And you said about
so the time windows are very close right now. We're about to see insanity about to happen here, Tom.
Yeah, you talk about the time windows, Bo. So time windows 154, which is the revelation, the second coming, the golden jubilee. But that's time windows. But when you add the 33 there, it takes you to 187, which again is George Washington, and also President Trump made that reference about $1.87, which is 187. So he could also be perhaps referencing the time windows, because the phrase "the time windows" comes to exactly 187. So that could be, he's mentioned it a lot, and it'd be interesting to see when he says it. He probably says it when the time windows start and when they close, etc. So
all we can do, we are like at max, at a crazy point right now. This is like critical mass. Okay, we when the door to the ark closed, chaos erupted. Okay, the ground broke. It just water started coming and rained for 150 days. This was chaos on the earth. And what happened ultimately? This is the key. This is the essence of what the point of Noah, right? What happened? It was the death of evil.
Mm-hmm.
Why did God have to do this? Okay, this was written in Genesis 6, verse 12. God saw the earth and it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their ways on earth. Genesis 6, verse 12.
Huh.
So that was the reason for the flood, because of the giants on the earth. That's why, it talks in the Bible, it talks about, in Genesis, it talks about, the men of renown.
Mm.
Okay, so they took the women because they were fair, and then that created the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a long story short, the Nephilim were killed in the flood. And those were the giants. But the physical giants were destroyed. That's why, you can go and, they try to hide all of these giant bones.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being, because if there's even one was found and then they because there's articles written in the newspapers in like 100 years ago or 70, 80 years ago about these bones, right? And since then they've thrown them in the ocean. They get rid of these things, right? There was some here in Catalina. They had to get them, throw them in the ocean, get rid of things, because if you find even one 20-foot femur, right? Or 50-foot femur, it proves Genesis, right? It proves the Bible, right? And giants, which proves the men of renown, right? So they have to always hide everything. But the point being is, these entities were killed in the flood.
Yeah.
But their spirits were not.
You hit some really good points there, Bo, and you said about death. You talked about death, because death is 38 as well, which is also the negative 38. 38 is gold, which is death. But also the word balance is also 38. And so when something's closing and when something's kind of destroying in a rebirth, a cycle, there's balance as well there. You might not seem it at the time, but it's ultimately bringing balance. And then you talked about Genesis 6, verse 12.
Okay.
And so the word Genesis is 78, which is Kennedy. But if you add 6 plus 12, that comes to 18. And if you do 78 plus 18, that comes to 96. And you talked about the death of corruption. Is that right? You said that?
That's what it was. It was Genesis 6. Basically says God saw the earth and it was corrupt.
Exactly.
Any different?
So something that happened is something that happened last month. A marker in some ways on corruption is well, I'll be careful how I say this, but we saw an important figure in England pass. She was age 96. But 78 plus 6 plus 12 comes to 96.
Okay.
And then you talked about the giants. So the word giant is 51. If you make it plural, it comes to 70, which is also, it's a number of words, but it's also the word secret. And so the reality of giants has been kept secret. But if you add the word the giants, as you said, it comes to 103, which comes to September, which is the month of September. And we've been talking about September 24, 25. And now we're into October. Yeah. And the beauty of this is Genesis equals 78. It equals Kennedy. It also equals podcast, but it also equals October. So you've started with talking about Genesis, and we're now in the month of October. So there was just some nice correlations that popped up there as well. So
so let's do more. Okay, so then let's get into the Noah cycle, and then we're going to talk about the day relative to our present day when the door closed. When it will actually, because the door technically closed on that cycle point. Okay, but there's also Genesis 7:11, which we'll talk about specifically on the day that the deep broke open. Okay. So there's 2 time points. So we're using this. It's kind of a little confusing. We're using the cycle of Noah, the door closing. Okay, but there's a date written in Genesis 7 verse 11, and I'll give you what that date is.
Okay.
And it relates directly to the flood. Okay. First off, let's go to the door closing. 30 days later would take us to, you gotta love this, because there's no way that this could happen, Tom, unless it was by design. So those who know my presentations of years now, the big cycle of time that I've discussed over and over and over again, and it's something that is biblical because it's God's mathematical, timing. It's his window of time of creation back to the 1,000-year millennial reign. Okay, it's his cycle. It's 4,000 years of the Jews. So from creation to the to Christ, it's 4,000 years.
Okay.
From the birth of Christ to the return of Christ is 2,000 years, and that's called, so the first 4,000 is the time of the Jews. The present one we're in is a 2,000 years right now, which is the time of the Gentiles. And then you have the 1,000-year millennial reign, which you referenced. So it's 4,000, 2,000, 1,000. 4, 2, 1. And then, so those who have watched my presentations of past I've shown for the past year, actually 3 years, I think it's been since 2019, there's a cycle that was shown to me when I was asleep, and that was the 4-2-1 pattern, 1-2-4, 4-2-1 pattern on the Dow stock market, okay? Well, what it was telling me and what the cycle foretold was that the stock market, the world stock markets, particularly, the US stock market, was expected to crash or collapse or whatever, drop in September. And this was foretold 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago. The cycle foretold, and what happened in September? Look what happened. The stock market collapsed, or you got to use correct words here. The stock market dropped. It didn't collapse. So that didn't happen yet. But the stock market, all of September was falling. And from when I did the interview, when I said it would start to drop, it was like the first week of September, it dropped 12%, which is sizable on the world's US stock market. That's huge, right? But it's not a collapse. So now, but this is the interesting part. So we talk about, that cycle with predicting September was a drop. Then if you look at the patterns, I can't show them to you right now, but the people who've had my PDF,
we'll have the link in the
there's a second window there, a pause window.
Okay.
That's all of October. So the up cycle could not and does not have to begin on the stock market until November.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a 30-day lag window, and this has been in the chart for 3 years now. Okay. Because the up cycle doesn't get underway until November.
Okay.
Stock market. Okay. It doesn't have to. So we have September was the down cycle. No, October is the pause cycle, so we don't know what could happen. It could go lower, it could go higher, but it doesn't take off until November. And so this is the interesting part. So 30 days from September 24, 30 days precisely is October 24. What's big about that? Look at the numbers, Tom. What numbers are there? October 24th, 10/24. What numbers are they? 1, drop to 0. 2, 4.
2, 4. Yeah.
Now reverse that. 4-2-1, 1-2-4, 4-2-1. So there you go. So all I'm telling you is that horrible things in the markets are coming. We have seen a crash in September. We have not seen the collapse. Now I want to point a couple things out. In 1929, this is really important for viewers to understand. In 1929, from the top, the markets dropped, they came back up, and then the final collapse, which we have not seen yet, caused the Dow, the US stock markets to collapse 45%. Just like this 44.5%. So just say 44% to 45%. So you had a collapse of almost 45% in a matter of days. That will take our current Dow down to the $17,000 to $18,000 or stock market price range in October.
Wow.
Okay, October into early part of November. All I know is anytime on or after, like we're heading into the third week of October here, because 10/24 is a Monday. If we look at so Monday, it's the last week of October. All I know is that we haven't seen a collapse yet. It's been prophesied the collapse is coming. So because we have an extra month here in October, all I know is that we're still looking, Tom, for in craziness, almost a 50, who knows what it could be, 50% collapse on the US stock market. So the better question is, Tom, if this happens, and it will, Like something's coming, okay? So the question is, what causes it? And then so 40 days out, so 30 days precisely when equivalent to the water breaking Edenville Dam, okay? And then 40 days takes us to November 3rd.
Wow.
Now this is the part, so those that are interested, this is like boom, 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 all these dates are hitting right now. And then if you read Genesis 7 verse 11, on the second month on the 17th day, this relates to the flood. So that's, like this one, November 11th, 11/11 in our world. So that equates to 11/11. So all I'm saying, there's two things about to happen here this year, 2022. First off, the collapse, okay? The collapse has to happen. To go back to the start of this presentation, the interview you did, because you brought up 45 and you brought the president up, right?
Yeah.
So he's not allowed to come in until after what? The collapse, because it's a Biden collapse.
Yeah.
Okay? Because Trump is one of the carpenters, he's in prophecy, he's a carpenter, right? Like Jesus was. No, he's not Jesus, but he's a craftsman. Okay? Craftsmen build.
Yeah, he's a builder, yeah.
So they have to rebuild. Yeah. So, which means that if the collapse happens here, end of October, which I'm telling you, it's going to be horrible. And something has to happen to have this happen, right? What could happen in the US that could cause a 50% collapse on the 50% collapse in the market, right? Something horrible has to happen, right? And then, only then can you have the craftsmen return to rebuild. But that will fulfill the Isaiah prophecy, as I will make his way straight and allow him to walk right into the office, which I don't think is going to be Washington, because Washington is built by them.
Yeah.
Okay. The Washington, everything there is Masonic. It's on 33-degree angles, all the streets and everything, right? Coming from the White House, right? But wherever he returns, it'll be straight in. And then that comes into our time point here of 11/11. And so God promised something in prophecy in Genesis, that he would never, after he destroyed the earth with a flood, he would never flood the earth again, like a worldwide flood. Mm-hmm. That was a promise. But so what we're going to see is this time is not a flood of water. It's going to be a flood of the US dollar back to the United States. Because we've created what? Banks and, more money that you can possibly even imagine, right? So all I know is that, we're supposed to see a great wealth transfer.
Yeah.
November is not far away. 124 is very soon. Mm-hmm. So we are like at that 40-day window of time that leads into 50 days and, leads us into November 11/11. And we're supposed to see the collapse of the US dollar. And when the dollar collapses, right, that will lead to what? Fulfillment of Proverbs 13:22. The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. Where do they store all their wealth, Tom? In the dollar, in the bonds. So when those break, you get the wealth transfer. So stock crash followed by immediate bond crash, followed by the greatest financial event in human history, all expected to go down here, Tom, before year end. And so, we've got, and the 24th is a powerful number, and on top of that, the 24th, let's talk about September 24th again. Let's go back to that again, because people can do the Google searches. I've got them on here, my presentation here, but basically the British pound. Okay. So what happened in Britain in the 8th, September 8th, right? It was the death of the harlot, right? The queen. And then isn't it strange that the currency of Britain collapsed? A historic collapse happened on the currency of Britain on the 20th of September. It plummeted in
Yeah.
value on that day. So that, and what do we talk about? The collapse of Babylon, right? The fall of Goliath. Goliath will fall. This is a 2,500-year prophecy we spoke about by Daniel 2, right? So prophecy has stood for 2,500 years. That prophecy, which put Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the world, to his knees before Babylon, before Daniel, because he interpreted this dream that Nebuchadnezzar couldn't imagine someone interpreting, and he gave the details of it. But basically, it described Babylon, the next kingdom Persia, the next kingdom Greece, and the next kingdom Rome, and then it even described the papacy. So it described all of the kingdoms, and the only part of that prophecy that's missing is Daniel 2, verse 34, a stone carved out by, again, this is critical, no human hand.
Wow.
Which means that this is God intervenes. So what's about to happen here in October, the best way I can describe it is the events that are coming here are going to be extreme. And when it all happens, the best thing I can say is, this is going to be, God's going to do this, and what God's going to do, no man can do.
Yeah.
So that takes us back to what we talked about, from this day forward, I will bless you, right? We had a debate about this last time in the horses at the racetrack, right? And so we can, chat about that. But the point is that, everything that we know to be true, like the Q movement, that movement you brought up, right? The white hats, the things you've brought up, all of it's true. But the point is, like, these people all have a secret handshake. They all work together. And because of that, everything that's brought to the surface to try to stop it, they keep stopping it. And so, what is that, the phrase that they say, trust the plan, right? So the issue that I have with that sentence is, whose plan are they talking about? Trust the plan. What are they talking about? So that's why I have an issue with that, that letter, because trust the plan. Whose plan is it? Because all I know is that God gets the glory, not man.
Yeah.
Or are they talking about God's plan, or are they talking about man's plan? But it doesn't say it. It just says trust the plan. It should technically say trust God, because the point is, what's about to happen is going to be so, can you make up the word ginormous, right? So incredible here very shortly, this year, 2022, that God gets the glory. So the plan is God's plan.
Yeah.
And then from that day forward, when God intervenes, and it's like, we're talking days now, a few weeks to days here. It's so imminent that it's going to be so profound that, the financial system breaks. Banks that we know are going to probably shut down. The financial system is going to fail. But this is the cool part, Tom, and you can go from here, right? The blessings that come to those who listened will come in such a great magnitude of overflow that you'll be able to bless all those around you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think as well, like we established, even if, trust the plan, just because it doesn't say God in that phrase, it doesn't mean it's not God's plan. I look at it as God's plan. But anyway, we came to a conclusion on that, so that's fine. But so you brought up some really good figures and numbers. So when you said about Goliath, so the word Goliath, if I've spelled it right, Goliath, Goliath comes to 72, which comes to first, it comes to money, and it comes to Monday. And you're talking about October 24th being a Monday. Yeah. So if a biblical collapse happens then, that would make sense, because it's on Monday, which is the word for money, and it's the word for Goliath. But you said fall of Goliath, or Goliath will fall, but I looked at the phrase fall of Goliath. Yeah. So fall of Goliath, fall is 31, of is 21, which is, add them together is 52, which is earth, or ship, heart of money. Money is Goliath, 72, but add them together comes to 124. So fall of Goliath comes to 124. And you've been talking about 124.
Yeah.
And also you said as well about this, you said, where are we? You said Monday, October 24th. So when President Trump was inaugurated back in January of 2017, on the 20th, I believe, his opening statement was, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. That comes to 345. There's a phrase in the movement, enjoy your popcorn. No, do you have your popcorn ready yet? Do you have your popcorn ready? Anyway, the point is, when President Trump said, thank you very much, that comes to 345. And that's to do with measurements and making things you talked about, being a craftsman, a builder, etc.
Okay.
But also that comes to Monday, October 24th. It equals 345 when you spell it out. So there's some interesting correlations that popped up there, but I didn't know the value for Goliath, which I liked. You also as well talked about the Genesis cycle, which comes to 119. We mentioned George Floyd earlier, but also redemption, foundation, building on a firm foundation, 119. Mary Magdalene is 119, but the Genesis cycle, 119. Nikola Tesla's 119. So there were some important numbers that came up in the things that you were talking about. What do you talked about? There needs to, for this to happen in a couple of weeks, there needs to be a huge event that causes it, or something causes it. What do you think that could be in the physical world? What some possibilities? We might not get it, bang on, but some things you might see, Bo, that could trigger this event to happen around the 24th of October.
Well, see, now that's a huge question you ask, because I calculate time just like you add numbers, right? I calculate time. Actually, that's what you're doing. Yeah, you add numbers, I calculate time.
Yeah, I add numbers, but I see correlations and I thread them along the numbers. So the numbers connect the dots. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's fun for us to talk, and so the answer to your question is that's where you have to, look to the words of the prophets. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So because God does nothing. It says, biblically, it states very clearly, God does nothing before first speaking through his servants.
Servants, the prophets, yeah, I'm familiar
right?
with that. Yeah.
And so the point being with that is,
is that in Amos?
It's Amos, I believe. Amos, yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I forget which phrase it is, but it's in Amos. And
yeah,
so
I know it. Yeah.
Is that, so to answer your question, what are some of the prophets saying? Well, they're talking about, White House being overturned, meaning like physically. They're talking about, the Statue of Liberty, okay. something about that going down, whether it's a piece of it or all, I don't know, whatever. But, so those are big things that have been referenced and talked about. So a lot of it, relates to the things that they have built.
Okay.
Are expected to be overturned or, be taken down, destroyed, whatever word you want to use. And because this is another important thing, because we're talking the intervention of God, the events that are going to unfold, typically when you read in the Bible, right, when the ground broke open, at the flood, you gotta imagine the size of the earthquake that hit. Okay, when the Red Sea parted, you gotta imagine, that there was a massive movement of the ground. When Jesus died on the cross, there was an earthquake as well that tore the curtain, whatever it was called, right? And so it tore it in half. So whenever God intervenes, you have to expect, volcanoes, but definitely earthquakes, eruptions. We're going to be seeing events like that manifest. Definitely, it would have to be, because it's done. Again, that's what's happened historically when the Spirit of God intervened upon the earth. So we are at a moment in time where God, the glory is going to manifest. That's what's going to happen. We're going to see the glory of God manifest. And we don't know that's the problem. We need, Isaiah 61, the year of the Lord's favor. Okay, we know that's 2022 because it all relates to 1971, and so therefore we know 50 years later is now. Because the events of 71, that's Nixon and taking us off the gold standard, Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, and most importantly was 71 was the first argument of Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court. And then the final decision of that came in January of 73, which would take us to this January of 2023. So that's how close all of these events are. Like we're sitting here in October, this November. December, sorry, October, most of October yet, November are supposed to be just mind blowing. December is supposed to be like massive rejoicing across the world, worldwide celebrations. Well, why would you have worldwide celebrations in December into January? Maybe because the rightful 45 is returned.
There you go.
Okay, but I would suspect things like this are good. But then what? So the question, what happens in October, right? So that's the $1 million question. We don't know, but I look at the cycles, and boy, they look, incredibly. I was expecting the stock market. I wrote this this is factual statement. I wrote to my subscribers last week, midweek, early part of the week. Watch the market continue to pull back. Stock market continue to drop this week. Last week, but I was writing about last week. And starting Monday, October 3rd, watch a rally in the stock market begin. It's exactly what happened. On Monday, yesterday, the stock market's reversed and went up 750 points, and then we're up again today, okay? And they're like, oh, wow, rah, rah, joy, joy, everything's fixed. Are you kidding me? Maybe they should Google a dead cat bounce.
Yeah.
Okay, so all I'm telling you is we have not passed the 20, and we have not passed 1024. And 1024, just like right now, September 24th, don't expect on 1024 that the markets are going to collapse 45%. No. Just like on September 24th was the start, 30 days later, October 24th, I would expect to be the start of a horrible stock market event. Okay, and we're talking, trillions of dollars in collapse, which is then going to force them to create money like you've never seen. Because remember, what did they do in the crash of March 2020, Tom? They created, I think, 6 or 7 trillion over a weekend to push the markets back up. So where do they get that money? It's called out of thin air. Yeah. Okay, so expect, if the markets plunge, that was a 38% crash. Imagine a 45 plus percent or something in that vicinity crash. Down through 20,000. All I'm telling you is that's highly, highly likely, and then that's going to set God's money, Haggai 2, verse 8, gold and silver, on fire, Tom. On fire. We saw yesterday silver move $1.70. I haven't seen that in, years. Silver went up yesterday on the day it was supposed to, per the cycle. It went up precisely on the day it was supposed to start, $1.70. And so if the markets collapse, which they will, that's going to lead into complete breakdown of their control mechanisms and fall of Goliath, which will unleash the greatest wealth transfer in human history. This is actually an interesting point. On September 24th and 25th, this is like crazy, and it happened, and I was there. Okay. So a friend of mine, Lois, she put together a conference in Texas called a Texas Gathering.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went there, 600 plus, maybe 700 people signed up. And it was a little disappointing because it was precisely 300 people showed up. Over 600, near 700 signed up, but at the final tally, only 300 showed up. Tom, this is crazy. What just happened was, that was Gideon's 300. You saw, the 300, right? They made a movie about 300. That happened on the 24th. What's that?
This is Sparta. 300, right. Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
but biblically, this is this is Gideon, the army of Gideon. Okay, and so on that day we blew the trumpets, and the Lord set and when they blew the trumpets, the Lord set the sword of one against another throughout the entire army. So you ask, what's going to happen? You are going to see, this is like the time of Gideon. You are going to see them, what it says in Judges 7, verse 22. They're going to turn on one another and destroy each other. Just like what happened in Judges. So when they blew the trumpets, and incredibly on stage, do you know how many trumpets showed up on stage to blow them? 30. 300 people showed up, 30 brought trumpets. How does this happen? But it happened. I was there. And when they blew the trumpets, the Lord, this is Judges 7, verse 22. And when they blew the trumpets, the Lord set the sword of one against another throughout the entire army. So that we're about to see fulfillment of Jeremiah 51, verses 11 through 14. Babylon, she cannot be healed, for her judgments have reached the heavens. Sharpen the arrows, take up the shields. The Lord has stirred up the king, because his purpose is to destroy Babylon. The Lord will take vengeance for his temple. Reinforce the guard stations and the watchmen. Prepare for ambush. The Lord will carry out his purpose, his decree against the people of Babylon. You who live by many waters and are rich in treasures, your end has come. The time for you to be destroyed. Jeremiah 51, verses 11 through 14. We're here. This is it, Tom. Gideon's army is about to take vengeance on them. They're about to turn their swords on one another. At their own hand. They're going to turn on. So what are they going to do? They're going to turn on one another, Tom, to protect their own hides.
Let's see what happens. Interesting. Gideon. So Gideon, Gideon, and Gideon is 54, which is bonds, which is love. Interesting. Gideon's army. And Gideon with the S, which is 73. And army is 57, which is Tesla, 130. The Kennedys. Interesting. And in October, 78 is October. 78 Kennedy. You talked as well about, so you talked about the 3rd of October. So October 3rd, that comes to 137. Comes to the word 17th, comes to President JFK, comes to Washington, D.C. If you add the Monday, which was yesterday, and if you do the of, or the Gideon part, because when you say a date, you can sometimes say, you could say October 3rd, but you could say the 3rd of October. So there's the word of, and there's the word the. You add those together, that's 54, which is Gideon. So we'll add the 54, 263. There's an interesting gentleman by the name of Greg Braden. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. And I've always liked looking at Greg's work. And he talked about there's a code within the DNA of the body. And the scientists extrapolated it. And it came up with an actual sentence. And I found this interesting, obviously, because of the connection I've got with numbers and words. But it says, God eternal within the body is 263. But that also comes to the date that you mentioned yesterday, which you said how silver jumped up. That comes to Monday, the 3rd of October. It also is 263. So it's interesting, these codes within life, within DNA, and how they're marked, and that there's a jump. The other thing with silver, the word silver is 85, which is awakening, which is storm, and a storm is coming, it's brewing. But also we talked about the British pound and how that dropped.
Yes.
The word British also comes to 85, and you got the whole thing of sterling silver, sterling pound, sterling silver. So you got the correlations there as well. So everything is intertwined and interconnected, and Yeah, the numbers, even if you do all of the numbers together, if you do A plus 1 plus B all the way through to 26, or A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, all the way through to Z26, you get 351, and it comes to God communicates through numbers. It comes to Jesus Christ.
I would agree.
All of those things, you know.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you with that, because that is so true. Because all I know is when I look at chart patterns, right? So, you know, my patterns indicating that this Monday we're supposed to see a bounce in the stock market, you know, and then that would cause Bitcoin, gold, and silver to turn up, and it's exactly what happened, right? So, you know, the question is, what got me started on this whole journey was, you know, it's a very simple question: is tomorrow random, or is it not?
Yeah.
It's a very simple question, right? If
Yeah.
you know, are the patterns already there in the charts? We just don't see them, or is tomorrow just a completely random event? And you know, and after all the years of study, it's the farthest thing from the truth for someone to tell me that tomorrow's a random event, because then I couldn't do the cycle work that I do and predict in advance, you know, when markets can turn. It wouldn't be possible. But Ecclesiastes states that which has been will be again. And so, and what I basically, you know, the conversation we started out with, what do we talk about? You know, the Noah cycle, right? We didn't talk about, you know, God flooding the earth. We're talking about the windows of time discussed in Genesis about Noah. Right. And so we look at windows of time. And so we laid that window of time in 2020, and that predicted the death of Ginsburg. How crazy is that? Right.
Yeah.
But it did. We're using the same cycle right now that's telling us 30 days from September 24th is October 24th. And that was a day that Edenville, this time window mathematics would be the time when the Edenville Dam broke in the township of Hope, Michigan, and 40 days later, you know, takes us to the first part of November. So all I'm saying is that incredible things are here.
Yes.
And the point is, and life isn't random.
No.
It's by design. Daniel proved that. God did it through Daniel. Not God. Yeah. God did it, proved it, and showed the world through Daniel, because that's a 2,500 year prophecy. That is mind-boggling prophecy that predicted all the kingdoms of the earth. How do you do that, right?
Yeah, divine design.
And so we're coming to a time window here of, you know, very powerful time points. We've got September 24th has passed. We have two big dates ahead, right? On top of November 11th, but we've also got October 24th. And then we got Thanksgiving, November 24th. Okay. And both of those are biblical, are important dates. We don't know what's going to happen, but I'm telling you, it's incredible things happen before year end.
Yeah.
Incredible things happen before this year's end. And you know, how many days are left into October 24th? Very few.
I know. Well, I'd known it, but I didn't count it until yesterday. I was in a cab, and I was like, hang on, this is literally a month away. You know, we're a month away. You said as well, the word you talked about tomorrow, and we were just talking about October 3rd equaling 137, but the word tomorrow equals 137. So there's a nice little correlation there with that. And going forward to November 11th, so November is 94, which comes to Ace of Spades. It comes to John, as in John F. Kennedy Jr. It comes to Third Eye as well, which is 94. And then 11th is 91, which comes to the word future, comes to the word Space Force, comes to the word liberty. It comes to the word POTUS, and you were talking about the return of 45. So how about this, Bo? I think there might be some multiple connections on this.
Okay.
But if you do November 94, 11th, you add them together, that's 94 plus 91. That comes to 185.
Okay.
185 comes to Donald John Trump. It comes to Book of Revelation. It comes to global financial reset. So there's a lot of things that could perhaps all kind of be happening in and around the same sort of time. And maybe it is, but maybe we see return to 45 early into the next year. But
yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's the
November
thing.
11th is very big, and if you do 11 times 11, it comes to 121, which comes to Revelation. It comes to Second Coming, and it comes to Golden Jubilee, which is what we're all, hoping for, the rejoicing. So it's amazing how everything is kind of on point and dovetailing, and all these timelines, time windows are all kind of converging at some point to see the glory of God and all of his children rejoicing.
Right. Well, that's the thing, and there is a prophetic word that we have a second inauguration this year. Okay, so we're supposed to have a second inauguration.
Okay.
All I know is that November is supposed to be crazy, and it's not. I don't see it happening on the 11th. I see it happening after the 11th, based on my chart patterns. Okay.
Okay.
November 11th will be a starting point of something potentially. Okay.
Yeah.
A very powerful time point comes in on November 24. That's the next powerful time point. Again, when you look at 24 has been very powerful. That was when Russia signed the military contract with Saudi Arabia on August 24th. Right, Evergrande Bonds failed to make a payment on October 24th. This is February 24th. War breaks out with Russia. March 24th, Putin demands payment for gas and oil in the ruble. The biggie was Roe v. Wade on June 24th. September 24th was the start of everything we're watching right now. This was Rosh Hashanah, and that was the collapse of the British pound on the 24th. So the next one is October 24th, and then November 24th is actually biblical because that is discussed in Zechariah 1. So Zechariah 1 talks about the 24th day of the 11th month. And it says, "My cities will again overflow with prosperity, and the Lord will again comfort Zion." So what is prosperity? Wealth transfer, right? So potentially before November 24th, or maybe on the 24th, or somewhere right in that time window, but we're talking November.
Yeah.
We should have already seen, or will soon, right at that time point, be seeing the greatest wealth transfer in human history.
Yes.
And it could have happened sooner, but I would say the November is very, very, very powerful for that, just because of Zechariah 1 and what it states right there. So we have to just wait and watch. But the time windows are so tight right now. But those who didn't prepare are going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
But why? Because everything's fine until it isn't.
Yeah. Exactly.
Everything's fine because the world is the way it is right now, and everybody believes everything's the way it's supposed to be. But God doesn't like it because it's corrupt. What was the word we used? It's corrupt. That was the reason for the flood, because of all the corruption in the world, right? And so because of what's going on in the world, God only needs, if you read all the stories in the Bible, 24 hours. That's one day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the one day, a moment in time, is like imminent now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that exact day. Could it be the 24th? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe is it a day or two before? Maybe. Is it a day or two after? Maybe. All I know is October is going to be, as it ends, crazy.
Yeah.
And then that leads us into insanity in November because of what happened maybe in November, or more events that go to October. So the culmination of the two events of a stock crash followed by a dollar collapse, and then the bond crash. Talk about insanity going across, reverberating across the world. The US dollar being rejected globally, possibly, right? So you're talking things that we can't even imagine.
Yeah.
We haven't seen before, but those who have been prepared, right, will have blessings like they've never imagined before. But we're basically looking, this is what's coming. It would be the fall of what's described in Revelation, which you referenced again, but just to give some scriptural references, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons. It's Revelation 18. Okay, so that is what's about to happen. But then I want to kind of finish on another really important slide, another scripture, because as great as things are coming, and so you may be in agreement, may not be in agreement, but I can just tell you the scriptures that you might want to reference in relation to what's about to happen. So the fall of the harlot is the fall of Babylon, is the fall of the system, and the world is going to be rejoicing, and it's going to be an incredible period of time ahead.
Yeah.
But I want to emphasize the word period of time. window of time, season, because for those that think this is going to continue now into the millennial reign, okay, I want to be so clear, and I'm just going to give you the scripture. The readers can, listeners can analyze the scripture on their own, but the scripture is Revelation 13, verse 11, starting at verse 11. And it states basically, and then I saw another beast rise out of the earth. Okay. The point is, this is the fall of the harlots. The harlot's riding a scarlet beast of 7 heads. So we're going to see the 7 heads go down. What are the 7 heads? Well, we've talked about all that in prior presentations, but the 7 heads, the church, the family, education, government, entertainment, media, and all controlled with the financial system. So those 7 heads that the scarlet is riding are about to be destroyed because they will hate her, the 10 kings, okay? We then will be blessed with a season of time to prepare for what I just read, because another beast will rise, and that will be the Antichrist kingdom. So take it for what you may, that, your viewers, go back and read the scripture, but it says another beast will rise. And this will be the one with 2 horns, and then ultimately the 10 heads, who will get the 10 kings of the earth, who will gain power across the earth, and that will be the Antichrist time window. So it's going to be not good. So we have immense rejoicing, blessings, and prosperity coming across the world, but it's for a season to prepare for what is still yet to come. So I wanted to put that out there to you and your viewers that think that this event that goes down is going to be the most awesome thing in the world. Yes, it will be, because God's involved. Yes, it'll be the greatest financial event in human history. Yes, it's going to be the greatest outpouring of the Holy Spirit on the earth in history. Yes, it's going to be awesome, awesome, awesome. But that doesn't end Revelation, because if you understand what we're about to witness, Tom, and maybe you can take it from here and see what your opinion is, okay? But we've talked about the first seal opened. The second seal is peace taken from the earth with the riots. And this is the fulfillment of the third seal of Revelation. The black horse, which is death, coming to them for what they've done, because what you have sown, thus shall you reap. So they're going to reap what they wanted to happen to us. And then the last part of that equation is the rider's having scales in his hands, and that's the rebalancing of the financial system. Same thing that happened, when you talk about, they had writing on the wall. You've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your kingdoms come to an end. So we're only at third seal. So I guess the question is, where's the fourth seal? You see what I'm saying? The fourth seal is plague and pestilence. We haven't seen that yet. So that's the 4 horsemen of Revelation.
Yeah.
So when this event goes down, as amazing and as awesome it's going to be, your viewers need to understand, just take it to heart. It's incredible because God intervenes. But this is the big but, okay? It's the third seal. That's only the third horse of Revelation. We haven't even seen the fourth. And then the Antichrist comes to fix what the 4 horses did. Get it? So he comes a false Messiah. So he has all the answers.
Well, I guess as with all of it, time will tell.
Yeah.
You talk about plague. I won't say the word, but we know what we went through in 2020.
But there's a problem with that. There was no bodies in the streets. You see what I'm saying? Like if you go back to what happened. If you go back to what happened in the bubonic plague, okay, I think it was a third or a half of Europe died. There were bodies scattered all over the streets, okay? That was a plague and pestilence, okay? So people, please go Google the definition and go look at what happened when the plague hit Europe.
Yeah. Well, I guess with all of it, time will tell. I'm never maybe there's a change. I don't know, but I guess with all of this, time will tell. Some things you mentioned, though, Bo, I did want to say is you talk about the importance of 24th. So 20 in numbers is 107, 107, which comes to currency, comes to quantum, comes to military, comes to 20 as in 2020, which kind of was the beginning visually of a lot of this for people. Yep. It comes to the word trumps, and we've been talking about the trumpets being blown. Yep. The word fourth is 88, which is Trump, which is Exodus. And so it's almost the phrase trumps Trump. And, things importantly happen on the 24th. You talked about Roe versus Wade being a big one of those. So it's interesting how that's going. Also, that comes to 195. I've mentioned movies before, but I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan's work. He did the movie Tenet, which comes to Israel, which comes to Zion, comes to Jubilee, comes to American, 64. And that's 8 times 8, 64. But his name is Christopher Nolan, which is 195, which comes to Trump's Trump, which comes to 24th. But it also comes to the phrase exchange of currency. And there's that kind of is, I look at that in terms of a way of the Jubilee, the wealth being poured out to people. There might be different vehicles on it, and also it's a large number. The sesquigentillion is 81 zeros, which is a large number, which is also 195. So it's just it highlighted a few things for me when you talked about big things happen on the 24th. And we've got the 24-hour clock.
Yeah.
And if you even go to, so you've got the year 2020. If I said to you, well, let's meet at 2000 hours, that would be 8 p.m. So that's an 8. And if we met at 2020, that would be 8. 2020 is 88, which again is 88 Trump. It's the number I had on my T-shirt when we first developed our friendship and meeting. Yeah. And you talked as well about the phrase "the start."
Yep.
So the word "start" is 78, which is Genesis, and we started with the scriptures in Genesis. 78 is also podcast, which we're doing now. 78 is also Kennedy. 78 is October, so the start in October. But the start is 111, which is New York, which is also perfection. And it's also a line, a physical line, and a marker in the film Back to the Future. So when Marty McFly flips the DeLorean round, DeLorean 74, Jesus is 74, Gematria 74, Messiah 74. When he flips the car around to time travel back at 88 miles per hour, he's literally drawn out on the street. It says the start, and that's 111. So it's like, okay. And it's and he first time travels in October, but he's gone forward into November, but then he goes back into October. So there's October and November are really highlighted in Back to the Future.
I didn't know
and
that.
We're talking about it right now, October into November. So there's a lot of power in those things. Yeah.
Well, remember, and Satan is a copycat, right? So he basically knows things. He's been around for thousands of years, so he's not dumb. So he's using these time windows as well. He's copycatting them, and that's interesting that it's October, November that they made them. Those time windows are important in that movie. So interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that the movie is a Satan movie. I think it's a good movie, but we might beg to differ on it. But I think it's a good movie. One thing
we all enjoyed it. I enjoyed that movie. That was a great movie.
Yeah, I found with movies is there's things in there. I found as the further back I look at movies, it seems like there's dark forces doing their numbers and coding, but also on the back of it, I can see the good codes as well. So I don't know how long this has been going on. I mean, we've been in man's been on the earth for a long time. Yeah. But I think they've been back and forth with the codes, the numbers, and copycatting, but also divinity as well. But Bo, well, we'll do this again soon because we'll have other timelines to look at and other time windows to look at. Yeah. But do you want to tell everyone where they can find you? We'll leave your website below, but just want to tell everyone how to find you.
Website is gold2020, so 2020 forecast.com. And you can just go to YouTube as well, put my name in, and you can find me there. Or I've got a little bit on Rumble as well too. But most of the current videos are on YouTube. And that's the best way to find me. It's a pleasure meeting you. I find your mind fascinating, the way you run your numbers. I just like, wow. Just what I do is what I do, and God's given you a gift to do what you do. You know what I'm saying? So we all have our gifts, and and we're supposed to use them.
Exactly. And we're supposed to meet, and we're supposed to share, and if we can add a few percentile points to the general, the big jigsaw puzzle of reality and life and God, then so much the better. So it's always a pleasure to talk and always fun. And I pick up things from you, you pick up things from me, and hopefully both of our audiences enjoy it. Well, they seem to. They did last time, so I'm sure they'll enjoy this one again, Bo.
And you're a true gentleman, Tom. My wife loved meeting you. When I met, she go, "Hey, you got to meet Tom." I'm like, "Okay, I'll meet Tom." And it's a pleasure speaking with you. So you're a true gentleman. God bless you and your family. And I enjoyed the time I spent with you today. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Thanks, Bo. Much appreciated. All the best to your wife, and we'll speak again soon.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Bo. Take care. Bye.